What up, world? Is Radioactive Podcast. It's your host, Ace Boogie, and we have a special guest with us today. Can you introduce yourself, ma'am?
Hey, howdy. My name's Sue Kalberg, and I am a reporter at KENS 5 Eyewitness News, but more importantly, I am a lifelong East Sider, pretty much.
Really?
Lifelong. I mean, I did a few years in King William when I was a young married person, but for most of my life, I've been right here in District 2.
So where does this love come from?
Well, my parents moved into Delcrest when it was being built. My parents built the first house on their street in Delcrest, and so my mom still lives there. 62 years later, she's still living in the same house they built for me when I was a tiny baby.
Oh, yeah.
So I went to St. Benedict's when I was a small child, and then I went to St. Gerard High School, which is right down the street here on New Braunfels Avenue. So I am born and bred, and then after I spent a few years in King William, I got an opportunity to move back to District 2 to the east side. And since the 80s, I've been on Salado Creek. I live very near Willow Springs Golf Course, the KOA campground. As a matter of fact, Redberry Mansion is right across the street. And so it's family, it's home. I love it here. Challenges and all. I mean, you know, we have challenges, but we have strengths here too. And I'm deeply committed to doing what I can to grow the place and to help us be our best.
So how does Delcrest look now compared to when you were younger? Has it changed a lot?
I think that there are still a lot of legacy people in Delcrest. My mother has always been, Verna Eskridge has always been really active in community affairs. I think that's kind of where I got a lot of my activism because, you know, I mean, there's always that one person, right, who's the Girl Scout leader and the school board person and the church council person and the neighborhood association leader and all of that. Well, that was my mom.
Oh, and so, fully active.
Yeah, and she, even until this very day, she's still very active. As a matter of fact, I think she's the chair of the National Night Out Wing Ding for Delcrest, and they always have a huge party.
Really?
And so I think that there still are a lot of legacy people there, you know, people that were there for many, many years. And I think that there's a lot of newcomers too. So it's a good mix. And I think one of the things that I've noticed over the years is just the commercial development. You know, we've seen a lot of, even though it's Delcrest is a neighborhood that's bound by geography. You know, you can't expand because you've got Loop 410 and whatnot. It's not like there's a ton of new houses, but the commercial development, there's been a lot of new businesses and a lot of mom and pops and a lot of new ventures coming through. And I love the concept of supporting local business in the corridor along W.W. White and Rigsby, because I think those people have the most. I think they're the bravest people in the universe. People who go out and start their own ventures and do their own business.
That's scary.
It's just so scary. I just can't even imagine doing it. So that's why, you know, the little locksmiths and the little restaurants and I try to frequent those places as much as humanly possible because I admire anybody who takes that kind of risk and makes the American dream happen for themselves.
So how did you get in? How did you get to where you're at today? How did you even get into getting in the door of KENS 5?
Well, I am a legacy broadcaster. You're probably not old enough to remember the E.F. Hutton commercial, but when I was a child, there was a commercial for an investment firm, and it said, "When E.F. Hutton speaks, people listen," and everybody in the whole world would come to a dead stop, right? Well, to me, when I was a little kid, I thought that about my Uncle Bub, because I had an uncle who was the original photographer at KENS 5. He was hired before KENS 5 even went on the air, when they were in the lead up days to the creation of television. You know, there was my roots in TV go back to before there was TV, because my uncle was hired before there was TV. I mean, I don't know. A lot of people may not know that KENS, the call letters stand for Express News Station. KENS TV was an offshoot of the newspaper because when it was invented, the newspaper decided to get into this new medium. And so they hired my Uncle Bub, and he was a photographer. And he was a very soft-spoken person,
Mm-hmm.
and he was the youngest of 6 siblings. And so, they would have these, and all of his siblings were party people. They were loud, and they were, they liked to party. And he was always the quiet one.
Mm-hmm.
But I would see him at these huge family gatherings with all these raucous people.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody would say, "Well, what have you been up to, Bob?" And
he had all the stories.
And he would quietly start talking. And, at that time, Lyndon Johnson was in the White House.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the president came back to Texas, my uncle was there. And when there were hurricanes and floods and train wrecks and movie stars,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what happened, as the photographer,
Mm-hmm.
my uncle had a front row seat on every awesome thing that happened. And I can remember, even as a small child, thinking, you get paid to do that?
Right. So, this has been an interest of yours since you were young? Like, have you
Oh,
always
yeah.
wanted to be?
Oh, yeah. From the get-go, from when I was a little kid, I thought, people pay you to
Mm-hmm.
mind other people's business. How can that be?
Uh-huh.
And so that was always, I never had another dream.
Mm-hmm.
I never had another thought that I would want to do anything else with my life. So I feel really blessed that I was able to jump into it early
Mm-hmm.
and just jump in with both feet and stick to it. So that's what I did. I went to SAC and I did the radio TV thing. And while
Mm-hmm.
I was at SAC, I had an internship at a
Mm-hmm.
local affiliate.
Really?
And that internship led to my first paying gig down in Corpus Christi, which led to coming back to San Antonio and home. And, a lot of people in broadcasting, they like to grow.
Uh-huh.
And they like to get, they like to grow up in markets and be famous and follow that dream. But I've always wanted to tell stories about my hometown. I've always wanted to be with friends and family
Uh-huh.
and tell the stories of my community. Because we're writing history every day.
I heard that.
You
So,
know?
your first time being in front of a camera, explain that feeling.
Terrifying, probably.
Did you freeze?
Well, now we call what we do MMJ. They call it multimedia journalist, or they call it MSJ, multi-skilled journalist.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people don't realize, because I hear this all day, every day, wherever I go, is, where's your cameraman?
Mm-hmm.
And people don't realize that we are the cameraman.
Really?
Back in the day, though, when I started, it was called being a one-man band, because you were the photographer and the reporter and the writer and the editor. And so when you're wearing 15 hats all day, every day, and trying to keep everything straight, just the sheer paranoia of trying to keep all the balls in the air.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people have the impression that it's very glamorous, that somebody points at you, and says, "You're hot,"
Mm-hmm.
and then it's all lights and camera action, and it's very glamorous. But the reality is that it's a lot of hard work, and you have to do a lot of technical stuff.
Really?
And so I think because I've been doing it now for 40 years.
Really?
I just got to 40 years on July 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is, it's not heart pumping usually,
Okay.
because I've just done so much of it, but it is a rewarding thing, and it is a fulfilling thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it is such an honor to be a part of history and to help people cope with things. One of the things that I think I do well is big spot news. When something really goes wrong and somebody needs to be level-headed and calm and compassionate. I think that because I've been doing it for so long, I think that's one of the things that I bring to the job and bring to the storytelling is a sense of not panicking, and I try not to get caught up in the moment, and I try to bring people along and introduce new information while repeating, because the nature of the beast right now and what we do is that when we're doing live coverage, extended coverage, Facebook Live, or coverage to our website, live streaming, there's always new people joining the broadcast. There are always new people coming in. And so we have to do a lot of repetition, so we said, if I said it once, I've said it a million times. If you're just joining us, I'm going to start at the top, But, Sutherland Springs, I was there doing live work all day to the world. I was getting phone calls from all over the world, from people who were watching our live streams through the CBS network. We were on Ken's 5, and we were on Facebook Live, and we were on the CBS network, and then we were worldwide with that. And another one was that incident out at the Walmart on the south side, where all the immigrants were stuffed in that tractor trailer rig on a Sunday morning. And somebody tipped me off to that, because that started at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And we had, by the time we signed off, I think we had almost 1 million clicks from people that were just tuning in to see what was going on, because it was so very tragic. There was the incident out in Northeast Bexar County where Bexar County deputies were chasing a woman who was wanted for felony warrants, and they chased her through a neighborhood and into a mobile home community, and they thought she had a gun, and so they shot at her. But she didn't have one. She had a piece of black metal pipe in her hand, apparently, but they shot a small boy that was in. The bullets went through the home and shot and killed a small boy. And so, and it was December 21st or something like that. December 20th. I mean, it was the kids. It was the last day of school for the kids. So the place was full of kids. Everybody was in the mood to have Christmas, but here was a small child that was dead. And we went pretty much wall to wall with that. And, so those are the things that, that make me honored to be a part of the storytelling nation and to be able to talk people through this, because I think San Antonio is we're 1.6 million people and growing every day. But when things like that happen, we're a small town. And people want to know news about their neighbors, and they want to know what's happening, and they want to be able to share the emotion and share those moments. And so being able to tell those kinds of stories is
definitely important.
It's important, and it's an honor. It's I'm just glad to be in the right place at the right time.
So with you doing this as long as you have, do you think you're numb to almost everything? Absolutely
not.
So you still feel when it comes to certain things?
Absolutely. We are working on a special project right now that is not ready for air. It's a long-term project that we're working on for the web, because we're much more than a television company now, just like yourself, podcasts and internet and website and Facebook Live and all that. We do a lot of different things. So we're working on a long-term project about an old murder case from many years ago.
Really?
And it won't be ready for public consumption for a while, but Deborah Knapp and I we sat down with one of our digital producers, and we did a long format talk about what we remembered about that case that's 30 years old. And
well, what goes into making a story?
That's what I was going to say about this. It's just like there are some things that stick with you over the years. And that's another thing that's so awesome about living in this time, in this place, with this technology, and the ability to tell stories in ways that we've never been able to tell them before. Because in the past, you got your minute and a half on TV, and that was it. And you put those electrons out, and they went out into the universe, and boom, that was it. Now, with the internet, people can go back, and you can have your minute 10 on TV, and then I can write as many words as I want. And I think that helps fully tell the story, especially here in East San Antonio, because we have so many challenges with regard to violence, street crime. I mean, I've done several vigils for dead young people in the last few days. And rather than just say, here's a vigil, they release some balloons, I try to go back and tell the full story of that person and their relatives. And I'm working right now on a story about the impact of continuing violence on children. How can you have a situation on Corliss the other night where more than 50 rounds were fired?
Can you
More
explain to me
than
more?
50.
What happened?
Corliss Avenue, one night this week, a few nights ago, there was a drive-by of sorts, and police found more than 50 shell casings in the street, and a crashed car that was riddled with bullets in a residential neighborhood. I mean, I was walking the streets. I mean, Corliss is a tight residential neighborhood with kids everywhere. I mean, there's bicycles, there's tricycles, there's, when you go back through the neighborhood in the daylight and you look around, you realize there's collateral damage. There's bullet holes in furniture and cars and houses. And I think that, and the guy who was Javon Lewis, 7 days earlier, found dead under I-10 at Aransas Street. That was 500 yards away. And that guy's vigil, lots of kids crying their eyes out. The week before, we were over at the Groove Club there at Houston and Commerce.
Yeah, I know that.
More kids. And we try not to focus on the kids so much on TV because we try to give the kids their privacy and let them grieve in private. But right now, I'm trying to do a story about the fact that it's not just one person who gets hurt in these things. It's a community challenge, Metro Health calls it a public health threat, the number of shootings we have around here. That's why they have the Stand Up SA team, the violence interrupters, that are supposed to help people work through these things. And San Antonio police now have a project called Handle with Care, where say there's a shooting in a home, and so they call the school the next day and they tell, there's a kid in 4th grade who had an incident last night, handled with care, because the kid will have been up all night because somebody got shot in their household or whatever. And so I went to the school district this week and I said, this isn't just one child. Everybody in this block was up all night because the whole street was full of shell casings. Yeah. So those are the stories that I like to tell because you can tell them on TV, you can tell them on the web, you can tell them on you can tell it with words, you can tell it with pictures, you can tell it with interviews, you can talk to people in an expanded format and let the story breathe a little bit. And it's much more than just a minute 10 on the news. And I think that all of these voices deserve to be heard.
Yes, indeed. I really commend you on wanting to get the full story out there because sometimes when it comes to other stations and so forth, you think, is the clicks more important than the truth? And in your opinion, do you think when it comes to other outlets that they think that the click is more important than the truth, in your opinion?
Well, I think that they call it the news business because we're always looking for new things, and I think that every day, every newscast has to have something new at the top. So the pressure to do the next thing is always intense. But because I live here, I just feel a commitment in my heart to not let some of these things flow downstream without comment. And I'm always encouraging people to do the next step, go to the captain's meeting, which I think the next one is Thursday night, for example, at the East Side substation, and get off the couch and get involved. Because the police always say, solving this crime thing is not a police thing. It's a community thing. And I think the people that I know that are out in the trenches, like D'Amico with her Successes in the Bag campaign, and all of the preachers, Daryl Boyce, and I could just, Walter Perry, Suit Up, there's a zillion programs around here where there are people out in the trenches all day, every day, trying to make a difference and making a difference. That sometimes those guys never get the light of day shined on them, or not often enough. And so those are the things that deserve their moment in the sun too.
This is true. So what has been the hardest thing that you've ever had to report?
I think that Sutherland Springs was a really hard day.
Okay, what happened there?
Um, Sutherland Springs was when a gunman came into the church
Mhm.
and killed more than 20 people, wounded more than 20 people.
Mhm.
And when that happened on a Sunday morning, when everybody was in church in Sutherland Springs, I was right down the road in Lavernia. I was 7 miles away, and I was shooting a story about a natural burial cemetery. And I
Mhm.
was interviewing the people who had buried their person in that cemetery, and they were talking about how it was so peaceful there, and they loved this natural burial cemetery because it was so peaceful, and they could leave the cares of the city behind. And as we were talking, there was a siren and another siren and another siren and another siren. And I called my desk and I said, "What is going on out
Yeah.
here?" And they said, "Oh, there's an active shooter in the church at Sutherland Springs. Are
Mhm.
you anywhere near there?" And I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm right down the street. I'm hearing the ambulances."
Mhm.
And so I got there while people were still being loaded into ambulances and
So
onto
you ran
helicopters.
towards the danger, like
Well, by that time the guy was long gone.
okay.
He did his damage and he drove off, and
Mhm.
he eventually shot himself to death. Thank goodness, and ended the threat. But so the situation was well under control by the
Mhm.
time I got
Yeah,
there.
there. Uh-huh.
But still, I remember early on, I saw a friend of mine. And I asked her who lives out there, and I
Mhm.
said, what's the real deal? And she told me the death toll was more than 20. And Sutherland Springs is the kind of church community where I thought that's like half the congregation.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it was he took out half the congregation. And immediately, uh,
Mhm.
I knew
Mhm.
that it was going to be, it was historic
Mhm.
in terms of numbers and in terms of a church attack and in terms of a Texas mass shooting.
Mhm.
And also, it's my community too. I lived in Wilson County for a time, for a year. My dad lived in Wilson County for many years. My
Mhm.
dad's dream home, my dad's ranch was right down the street from Sutherland Springs. I passed through that intersection
Really?
many, many, many days to drive to my dad's house.
Mhm.
I know the sheriff out there. I know lots of people. When I lived out there for a year, I actually wrote a column for the local paper, the Wilson County News. And so even though I'm a San Antonio born and bred person, I kind of feel like because my dad was there for many years, that those are my people too. And so, um, to be a part of that. And then, um, the scale of the devastation was so epic, and they were trying to get control of the scene and try for the long haul and bringing in more and more people,
Mhm.
and people were just flooding into the area as word spread.
Mhm.
And there's only one little tiny baby community center in town,
What?
and so they sent all of the survivors to the community center,
Uh-huh.
but then the law enforcement people who were in charge kept pushing the line back and pushing the crime scene back, and they pushed us to the community center. They said, "Go to the community center. We want all media to stage at the community center."
Okay.
Well, for the love of God, that's where the victims were, that's where the
Oh,
families
man.
were.
Right.
And it was, we didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be there. Nobody wanted to be
Yeah.
there. And we're like, I found a preacher who
Mhm.
seemed to have some leadership role. And I said, "Dude, we don't want to be here, but those guys with guns said, go over there and
Yeah.
wait for further instructions,
Uh-huh.
and we don't want to be in your face. We don't want to be in your armpit. This is terrible.
Right.
You need space to grieve. You don't need us in your face."
Mhm.
But there was only one place in town to go, and we all ended up in the same place. How horrible for them. How horrible for us
Mhm.
to be um, disrespectful, of people in their worst hour.
Right.
And as the day wore on, it just, the implications kept getting more and more grave. When you realize that he had taken out children and grandmas and it was an epic, sad day.
Yeah.
And but with that being said,
Hmm.
immediately the relief effort and the support effort began, and people showed up and started cooking, and people showed up with just carloads of bottled water
Really?
and the porta potties, and I mean anything that you could imagine
Hmm.
that people could need in a disaster, it started showing up.
So the people of the community came out and supported the community.
People all over this part of Texas were, nobody called them up and said, you
Yeah.
need to show up. People just started showing up. And that was awesome too.
Yeah. Yes.
And so even in the face of abject terror and insanity, because, when something like that happens, you shake your head, because
Yeah.
who can fathom what's in somebody's head to make them be a mass shooter at a country church?
Hello. That's what I'm saying.
And so, as we went into the night, that happened during the church service and in the morning. And we pretty much did wall-to-wall coverage and were on live somewhere through 11 or 11:30 at night. So we did about 10 or 12 hours of talking to people and, trying to help people kind of come to terms with what had happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that in 40 years, that would be I don't think anything would top that in terms of physical effort and grief and trauma. And, and we have done so many mass shootings now that my company, Tegna,
Mhm.
has, it's so sad to say that we have become a well-oiled machine at a corporate level now. Midland, Odessa, El Paso, we all flood in to make these things happen. As a corporation, we respond with extra resources. And mental health care for all of us is on the top of the list for my company, for Tegna.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Because when you're with grieving people in a mass shooting, mass casualty situation, it's hard, it's hard. But on the flip side, I've done some awesome things too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Tell me about some of those things that you just. Matter of fact, what's one of the things you're the most proud of?
Well, I think the thing that I got the biggest kick out of, because I'm a San Antonio girl. I mean, it's not. Most people probably wouldn't think this is such a big deal, but here in San Antonio, we're the home of the Alamo Wing, the 433rd Airlift Wing, the C-5 aircraft out there.
Okay.
On the west side, those huge, awesome C-5 Galaxy aircraft. And my whole career, I have watched those things float over West San Antonio. If you're on the freeway and one of those things goes over your head, and it blocks out the sun, and the ground shakes. I had always wanted to be on a C-5, and I finally got my opportunity during hurricane relief. I got to go on an airlift mission with the 433rd,
So you were able
delivering.
To get inside?
We flew to Colorado to pick up supplies, and then we flew to Florida to pick up some other supplies, and then we went to Puerto Rico to drop off all the supplies at an air base on the far end of the island. And so it was a two-day trip. And it was, that aircraft is awesome, and those people are awesome, to be up close. San Antonio, our military mission here is just awesome. Our people are I'm just really proud to be a San Antonian, and really proud of all of our military, and really glad that I got the opportunity to do that. But, I get to do awesome things, Yeah. I mean, whether it's bad or good, as a photographer, I get a front row seat.
Really? So is that what you do? You do photography?
I do it all. We are multi-skilled journalists. We shoot. We shoot our own video.
Okay.
We write. We edit. We most of the time we don't do our own live shots, but in some markets there's a lot of people who are out being one-man bands, and they also have the ability to go live. Many people don't realize that what used to take a satellite truck, a big huge truck, is now the size of a backpack. You can do live television. You don't need a live truck anymore. You can do live television
Really?
with a piece of equipment that literally is in a backpack. We call them backpacks because you can do live television with a backpack. And so
That sounds convenient. Really?
yes, and editing, used to take a whole bank of equipment, and now you can edit on laptops in the field. And so really, I mean, with the amount of equipment that you can carry on your body, you can be a one-person crew, and you can shoot, and you can edit, and you can feed back, and you can either feed back through a TVU pack, a live pack, or you can feed back through the internet if you have a good internet connection through a laptop. And so that to continue to be relevant and to continue to learn new skills. People always say, well, what do you need to know to do this job, to be successful in this job? And what you need to know is how to be curious and how to learn, because every week we have to learn something new in terms of technology. I mean, we're going through a huge upgrade in technology right now. Like in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be moving to an entire new system, and the old editing system that we used to use is going away, and everybody's going to be editing solely on laptops, and the whole way we're going to save stuff is going to be different. And so that's what it takes to be a success in this career now, is to totally be on board with learning new stuff all the time.
All the time. So is it a big difference from when you first started to now? Being with all this technology change, like what's something that you used to do back then that's like people would laugh at you if you were doing it now?
Oh, well, the internet hadn't been invented back then, If you wanted to look something up, you had to go find a book and look it up, I had a millennial tell me the other day that she was surprised that older people didn't realize that younger people really did know more than older people because they had access to the internet all the time.
But thing is, I think but then I don't think that's true because y'all are actually reading the books. You know what I'm saying? With us, we look at this phone and it just come and go. And go.
So, technology, when I started in this business, I weighed 125 pounds and I carried about 70 pounds of gear. To make it happen. A TV, camera, the recorder, the batteries, the lights, the batteries for the lights. It took about 70 pounds. And now I'm thinking if I'm carrying my tripod and my camera and everything else I need, it's probably closer to 20.
Oh yeah, totally different.
So that's totally different. But the workload has increased because now, back in the day, we used to just do TV. You produced your little piece for TV and you were done. Well, now, as soon as you get to a scene, you have to start tweeting and social media, tweet, Instagram, Facebook Live, web first, get product out. I mean, people to this very day, every day, pretty much, somebody will say, well, what's your deadline? I'm like, my deadline is now, okay? It's now. This is not the 10 o'clock news. This, we're not holding things for 10 o'clock. If something's happening now, my deadline's now. Right. I need to be Facebook Live now. It's not just one product. It's the tweets. It's the still pictures. It's the information getting out right away. It's Facebook Live. Then it's shooting for TV. Then it's writing for TV, editing for TV, writing for the web, posting more additional content, more sound, more pictures for the web, and then forwarding it to the next thing to say, what's the next thing, to get prepared for the next news cycle, because this doesn't sleep. Whatever story I cover today, somebody else is going to have to pick up for the night shift, and somebody else is going to have to pick up for the morning shift. And so I think there's just a lot. We produce a lot more content now than when I was a baby journalist.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I remember watching the news one time. This lady was helping this other lady smash grapes. I guess they was getting ready to make wine, and the lady fell over out of the bucket and she fell. It was really hilarious. What's some of the funniest things you've seen in your field?
Oh, gee, funny. I'd have to think about that one for a while. It's not funny because I got hurt. But early on in my career, I was shooting a series about the city was at a crossroads on what we were going to do with our garbage collection. Were we going to develop a landfill ourselves? Were we going to be in the landfill business, or were we going to hire someone to take care of our garbage? And it was a big decision because it would go 20, 30 years in the future, and it would be a lot about money. So we decided we were going to take a big look at garbage collection in San Antonio and what it really meant to our pocketbook and what a good decision would be. So I went out to shoot video of garbage, and I had seen video shot from the back of a garbage truck. I had seen somebody else do a story where they actually got on the back of the garbage truck just like the garbage guys, you know, and rode the garbage truck and shot video. And so for whatever reason, I thought that would be a good idea. And I got on the garbage truck to shoot video and slipped and fell.
Was it raining that day or something?
No, I don't know. I just lost my balance because, you know, I had a bunch of stuff. I had 70 pounds worth of gear, and I fell into the street while the truck was rolling. I mean, I fell off of a moving truck with all my gear, and I broke my ankle, and I had a lot of road rash, and
so it was like a drop and roll type of thing.
Oh yeah, all of that. I mean, because I was trying to save the gear on the way down, you know. And some little lady came running out of her house, and she said, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. My daughter saw you fall. Are you okay? Can I bring you a Band-Aid? I can bring you a Band-Aid." And I'm like,
bleeding. The whole side of my body.
I think it's going to take more than a Band-Aid. I called my office, and I said, "I fell." And the guy said, "Yeah, off of a truck that was moving at the time. It was going down the street." "Yeah." "And I'm bleeding." "Yeah." And I know that the mount on my camera is broken. I think the rest of it's okay, but it's got a little bit of a problem. But I know one thing is broken for sure. "Yeah." And I think my ankle is broken because it's really swelling. "Yeah."
That's all they had to say.
And then I went, "What do I do? I don't know what to do. I don't know. I don't know what I think I have to go to the hospital." And he said, oh my gosh. Well, you know, go wherever you want. Do what you want. Because I was a photographer, and I had a reporter with me. And so he drove me to the hospital, and, you know, that was the day before cell phones too. And so I was on the phone with a Band-Aid lady. You know, I was in her house, you know, in her bathroom, cleaning up and using her phone. And so I remember getting to the hospital, and I remember the reporter getting on the phone with my husband, you know. "Okay, now don't freak out, but she's okay, but I'm with Sue at the hospital." I was like, we're going to freak out now.
So how often do you get called out of your bed for a story?
Not very often, because we have a big team, you know, at Kent's 5. We have a big team, and we have people that are on duty pretty much 24/7. The streets are covered overnight with various methods. And we have crews that are on until 11 o'clock at night. So I don't hardly get called out in the night very much. But the situation over there with the Walmart parking lot with the immigrants, that was a situation where somebody who knows me heard it developing on a scanner hound who listens to stuff, had enough presence of mind to tell me that it was a big deal. When he heard the body count, he called me at like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning and said, "This is a big deal. This is going to be a national story." And so that was getting rousted out of bed. But I will tell you that, you know, there are apps out there in the world that allow you to listen to the police radio channels and the fire radio channels. And the San Antonio Fire Department dispatch page is on the internet. And so I am a devoted scanner hound, and I have gear with me at all times. I mean, if news were to break right now, my camera is in the car, and it travels with me. And I mean, the other day I was going to go out and shoot the story with the school children, you know, and talk about violence. And I wanted video of kids going to school. So I was already walking out the door at 7 o'clock in the morning so I could get kids going to school. And I heard fire truck. And I look at the screen, and there was a fire on W.W. White, and I looked out the door and I could see the smoke. So I went over there and shot it because, you know, I mean, if I hear fire trucks or I see smoke or whatever, I'm going to be there.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what the youngsters say all the time. It's like, you just seem to show up where things are happening. You just seem to know. It's like, well, yeah, I pay attention, you know?
Yeah.
When I hear a lot of sirens, there was a thing out on I-10 I don't know, it's been more than a year ago, I guess, but I heard a bunch of sirens and I looked at the fire screen and there were like 10 or 12 fire trucks and I went, what the heck? And it was where there was a DPS. They were chasing some guy and he went the wrong way on I-10 and they got involved in a shootout and the guy shot the trooper and the trooper shot him and they were in the middle of I-10 and so yeah, I mean, I was doing yard work and I just dropped everything I was doing and went there and but the youngsters, you know, in the crowd, they're like, how do you just know how to show up?
You gotta know the signs. What to you is the perfect story?
The perfect story, I guess, would be where I can make an impact.
Okay.
Where somebody who has no voice feels like they have a voice. Where sometimes the perfect story is no story. Sometimes when I see something that really is an injustice or somebody's doing the wrong thing and they just need to be smacked. Sometimes the best story is no story because I have no problem calling somebody on the phone and saying, what the what?
Yeah.
And saying, you know, I don't know the full story, but this is what this other person is saying over here. And if that's true, why don't you just, I'm calling you to give you an opportunity to fix this. Because to me, this seems like you could do a better job of customer service or something. Maybe just listen to this person. Can you just fix this rather than public humiliation? Because you know, if what they're saying is true and this is on TV, you will not look good. Why don't you just fix it? Why don't we just cut to the chase and you fix it? And that's awesome.
Ooh, that's a story that's not seen, huh?
There's plenty of those.
Yeah.
There are plenty of those that happen because it helps people and people who have failed to fulfill their promises oftentimes appreciate the chance to make it right behind the scenes. So those are good situations to have that feeling of being able to make a difference in somebody's life. That's awesome. And then when you do a story that results in policy change or results in righting a wrong, those are good days too. At the end of the day, if you can make somebody's life better or make the community better or shine the light of publicity on something that needs to be fixed and be on the road to fixing it, those are good days.
Okay. So I remember you telling me earlier that someone had called you and let you know. How important is it in your field to have people like that who could call on you or you can call on to get information? Like, is that networking portion of that very important?
Way.
Yeah?
Way.
That's how you survive pretty much, huh?
Right. We live on tips.
Yeah.
You know, we live and die on
different
tips.
type of tips.
Different types of tips for all kinds of things, for good stories and bad stories. And another thing, you know, we have there's a lot of different ways to be on TV. You know, some stories are the lead story because it's spot news, but some stories are like this film festival that's coming up, Black Film Festival.
Yes.
That guy, I know that guy, and he called me up and he said, hey, how about an interview on one of the morning shows, you know? And so I was able to hook him up with the right people and the right producers to schedule, you know, a morning show interview. And so that's super important. And that's why my Facebook friends network is important because almost anything that happens on the whole East Side, no matter who it involves, there's someone, we share common friends.
Right.
I don't know them, but I know they're friends, and I can reach out to almost anybody, especially in this part of town, because I don't have the best network known to man, but my network is probably better than a lot of other mainstream media in San Antonio, and I'm glad about that.
Okay, so getting to an end, is there something that you feel that the people just have to know or they should know? Get off the couch. You know, I think that we do a lot of things in life for recreation or for entertainment that don't make us better. And there's a crying need, especially in East San Antonio, to be better and to do better. And I just applaud all of the people who are out there trying to make a difference every day. And I wish we had more of those. I went to this school
the school where all these children attend. Okay, so we had all these shootings with these mass shootings, 50 shell casings in the street. The guy found dead under the bridge. The guy found dead at the club, and these were raging gun battles, every one of them. Multiple shots fired, lots of kids involved, lots of kids watching it. So I went to the closest elementary school, and one of the staff members came outside, and she said, what are you doing? And I told her that I was working on a story about helping children cope with living in a war zone. And I was hoping to talk to people. And did they have a PTA or something, some parent group? Was there somebody, in the parent community that she could hook me up with? And here's an elementary school that doesn't even have a PTA because they can't get people off the couch. Nobody's involved in the lives of their children. Nobody supports their school community. I mean, historically, that's true at high schools, but an elementary school has nobody in the parent community that is supportive of the teachers and the kids and there's nobody holding bake sales. There's nobody advocating. There's nobody going to meetings with the police to say, hey, this is crap. We don't want to live in a war zone. I mean, who advocates for children? I mean, schools are a perfect place for that. And so that would be, let's all go up east, let's go up, Do you
think there's a reason why they're like this? Like, this kind of sounds like as if they're scared or they're like, they no longer have that hope, maybe? Why do you think that is?
I don't know. That's the nut that we have to crack. The police always say this is not a police problem. It's a community problem. And, in the Wheatley Heights buyout zone, which is where a lot of this happens, the 600 block of Wheatley, Morning View, 600 block of Morning View. I mean, I can't even tell you how many shootings. I've been covering shootings, drug-related shootings in the 600 block of Morning View since I was a baby photographer in the early 80s. Really? Same thing. And nobody did anything about it until last fall. But, I mean, it's wide open drug trade out there. Why does nobody do anything about it? I don't know. It's because they like for it to be there. I don't know. But it's a culture. So when I was really saying, why can't we do something about this? And I was really thinking about the Wheatley Heights area because it's half an area now. It's after the flood of 98, they bought out a lot of houses. And so there's a lot of open territory now. So I drove around. I counted 13 churches in that teeny tiny little geographic area.
I went to one of those churches in that area.
Yeah. Well, where's the preachers? Where are the church people? Where are there've been several times where I can remember where we had an increase, a sudden increase, a spike in gun violence. And then, there was a small, short-lived effort to do something, they cooked hot dogs and they, had ice cream parties and stuff like that for a short time. But the sustained effort to change the culture, I don't know what that answer is, but I know there's a lot of people working on it, and I applaud those who do, and I would encourage anybody who isn't involved in it to get off the couch and to get out there and find a program. That's the glorious thing. You don't have to reinvent the wheel because there's already like D'Amica's with the bags. She's selling handbags and she wanted one scholarship, and what did she do? Like 10 or 11. Her goal was to sell a couple of handbags and create a scholarship for a graduating senior. And she did like 10 or 11, and all her friends jumped in. Oh, you want to sell a bag? Well, I'll give you a bag, it's like in the age of social media, it's super easy to connect. And I would hope that we use the power of the internet and the power of media and the power of social media for good.
Okay. Speaking of social media, let's get your social media.
skalberg@kens5.com. That's my email. That's always on. And then I know that I'm supposed to be a Twitter person, but I am on Twitter, and I do have oh my goodness, I have 1, 2, 4, 3 followers on Twitter. At Sue Kens5. That's me on Twitter. I should be Instagramming, but I don't. But I like tweets. And I have a professional journalist page on Facebook, Sue Kalberg, Kens5. And I post a lot of my work-related stuff there, Sue Kens5. I guess it's at Sue Kalberg, Kens5. So I have a professional Facebook page. That's my smiling face in front of the Alamo there. Okay. And so, yeah. So that's who I am. And I'm always looking for ideas.
Really? Do y'all take interns?
Interns are hard to come by because, back in the day when I was an intern, we worked for no pay, and the federal government says you can't do that anymore. You got to pay them. And so it's a budgetary thing. And so we only have, Great Day has a couple of interns. We have one intern, Great Day has one intern. And so those are really hard to come by. Internships are hard to come by because of wage and hour laws.
Because of budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you know what? Let me tell you this about that.
Yeah.
For a person like yourself and for anybody else who has access to a microphone or the internet, we have a guy who essentially got the job because through his church, he developed a social media following. He has a lot of followers. He gets a lot of clicks. He produced he used his phone, to do a lot of original content. And he caught the attention of people at the station because he was producing original content, and because he brought followers with him. And they said, how about you try doing thus and so? Well, the guy has been through 2 or 3 iterations at Ken's, moving up the ranks now, but he was able to do that not because he had a degree or because don't get me wrong, he does have a degree, but that wasn't what led to the job opportunity. The job opportunity came because he was an influencer. He was a person who knows how to get out there and get the followers and connect with people in person, in IRL, in real life, and on the internet. He connects with people. And I think there's a lot more opportunity for that now than there ever was in the past.
Okay.
Reaching out and touching people will never go out of style.
Ever. Okay. Ever. All right. Well, anything else?
I think this has been delightful. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
I appreciate you for coming. This lady's so sweet, y'all. All right. This is Radioactive, y'all. Peace.